a pleasure to have you all here this evening for an exclusive gathering of charter members and families. And to set the tone for the evening and for the welcome address, I request President Vivek Krishna Govind.
Good evening, friends. Jimon will set the tone, so I'll just welcome. I'll stick to my tasks. So wonderful to see all of you here. I think a few more friends are joining. I've got a couple of messages that people are on our way. We have a very interesting session lined up. Prashant is a son of the soil, part of the Kochi. We grew up together. We were in the same school. His sister Divya is one of my closest friends from school. His parents are closely known to many of us here. And, homeboy who has gone places. We are so proud of him, what he did over the last decade or a decade and a half, how he founded the company and where he took the company, and later with the Tata Consumer coming in, and thereafter he continued with them for the last 4 or 5 years. He will share the whole journey with us. He's a fantastic speaker, and I'm sure over the next 1 hour or so we'll all have a great time interacting with him. So over to you, Jimmy.
So interestingly, I met Prashant in Delhi a couple of weeks back and got talking, and Prashant said, I'll be in Cochin. So I said, okay, if you're in Cochin, then we all got to get together. Not going to lose that opportunity. So that's how Prashant ended up here. Journey of Prashant, we will hear from him on his own, in his own voice. But what is interesting here is how a person thinks of creating something different, an ideation, take it from an idea into a small thought process that eventually becomes a product through execution. So we are all told that one has to dream, but one also has to work towards achieving that dream. And this is Prashant here, who will take us through that journey. And to me, what I found very interesting is that we all go through these phases, but not everybody actually does it. So here's somebody who's actually done it, and perhaps also looking back, what are the highs and lows of how he did it is also interesting for us, because that gives us a perspective of how a person thinks and how you overcome certain roadblocks that come along the way. One question that I had in my mind, and I did ask him, is why did you get into this? How are you even connected in this process, and how did you end up making something with millets? What is your connection there? Technically, he has no connection, but he built a connection because he was in the US, and how today a certain strata of the society are thinking that, I've lived my life, it's been a consumer, in a consumer-driven kind of a life, fast-moving, fast-paced. How do I connect to something basic to reinvent myself to, and that starts from food. Really starts from food. I think many of us can relate to that. But again, capitalizing on that thought process and how do you connect it to a delivery of that thought is something interesting. Many of you may not know that his uncle is Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. Yeah, grand uncle. So there is a connection with agriculture. Yeah. Again, the point is there is a connection somewhere. So, you don't, again, it's not like something you do one day and then switch over completely to something else. That's a usually difficult transition. You always move towards your adjacencies, which you think you know better, and grow on. But here is a chap who built the adjacencies with what he had. So let's hear from Prashant. This was originally supposed to be a fireside chat, but there is no, you typically have fireside chats when you want to probe and get things out of a person more and more by researching on the person and then asking questions. I don't think we need that with Prashant. He's going to be soulful in his conversation with us. Over to you, Prashant.
So I am humbled to be here. Very humbled in this audience who I consider to be way more achieved than I am. But I'll share my story for what it's worth. I'll share some of, I call life as a sine curve. right? So sine curve is like the ups and downs, ups and downs. But as long as if you think of it as a wave. So if you think of it like a wave, then you're just swimming in the ocean. And so that's just a perspective that I bring. And hopefully I'll share some perspectives. Hopefully I will learn as I've learned through this journey, learn also through this interaction. But I think what I'd request you to do over the course of the next, I think I'll do around 14 to 18 minutes, and then we'll open it up for a chat. I don't know, Jimon, if he feels I've not squeezed enough, he'll squeeze it out of me. I spent the last 3 hours with him, and I know that he can extract not just out of oils, but also out of human beings. So without further ado, once I just figure, where do I need to point this to? No, I'll do it. But do I point? You better point, Oh, that will be it. Allah, next slide. Please. Sorry, just. Okay. Either? Oh, down. Okay. Sorry. There are a million taps like this in India. You open them, water doesn't come through. And this number is increasing daily and every day. And it's not a phenomenon of today, it's not a phenomenon of yesterday, it's getting worse. Climate change is a reality. We're hearing it, we're seeing it. Extreme weathers, floods, avalanches, extreme climates, places where they've not seen snow, they see snow. Places that have always had very good, considerate temperatures, everything is getting questioned. And don't look at it just from today. Look at it for what we're going to leave for the next few generations. This is not something that we can just leave. This is not something that you can just ignore. Is there one solution to solve it? The answer is a big no. It's a sum of parts of very many things that needs to happen. And as responsible citizens of this country, how do we find a potential sustainable way for us to do so? Like I said, there is no one answer to solve. But food definitely can play a role if dealt with well. And I said dealt with well. So it's not that it's definitely going to solve, but it's one of those things. And it's with that, let me just introduce to you this grain of millets, which thankfully today, a lot more people are aware than it was when I'd started on this journey 12 odd years ago. A fact that some of you may know, 1 kg of rice that you and I buy from the supermarkets takes 4,000 liters of water to grow. 4,000 liters from the ground. 1 kg of millets takes 400 from the sky. 4,000 from the ground, 400 from the sky, just by 1 kg, we're a 1.4 billion plus. So the mathematicians in the room can do the math. I'm not here to stop you from consuming rice. I love my rice too, right? But what can this make as an impact as well? So a kg of rice and a kg of millets is just to give you a perspective. Now, I'm not going to go through this ragi versus rice, millets versus rice. I'm not going to give you all of that. But just to set a little bit of a context so you get a feel around it. Millets are really smart foods. Foods that are not just good for you, but it's good for the planet and good for the farmer. The difference between superfoods, and I call superfoods selfish foods, right? It's just foods that's good for you. Is that really what we really want when we, as a smart foods and a smart generation, you want to look at things that are a little bit more sustainable? Yes, I want my appetite. I want all the good stuff around it. But is there something more than food can do for you? And that, to me, is a really, really big part around this. Unfortunately, and like Jimon said, India, millets are native to this country. It's not something new. During the Green Revolution, we had to take a decision, right? And that decision, rightfully so, was to eradicate poverty, hunger, and how do you really ensure that we don't have a starving-struck country? 1972 famine, there are enough and more of them, right, that we could keep going on. And the country took the right call, which was we will promote rice, we will promote wheat, we will focus on them, we'll drop everything else. I was having a very interesting conversation with my niece this morning. She's doing her fellowship in Ashoka, right? And unfortunately, and she doesn't want to reveal, obviously, her relationship with our uncle. And it's a very interesting way, right? But people just say, no, 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 you should not have green revolutions, bad, etc. But like Jimon and me were speaking, if you take yourself back to that particular time, do you want a country of have and have-nots, which we have in other parts of the society? Do you want to ensure that you eradicate the one basic thing, right? We all work for one basic thing, which is first we want to get our hunger sorted. And I think that's the decision the country took. I think it's the right thing for the right moment. But then, as we're developing and as we move forward, is there an option, is there an opportunity for us to revive these grains? So without going further, and I'll just take a step back for a second and just give you a little bit of my personal journey. Agrarian roots, rooted in Tamil Nadu 200 odd years ago. Family moved over to Kerala, grew up in Cochin. I saw my dad and mom build a large distribution warehousing business. I saw the world of consumers. This is 80s, 90s, so liberalization, saw the brands getting built. And I don't know what it is, but you know, it's like the situations are there. I was very clear that I wanted to build a brand. At a very young age, I was very clear, I want to build a brand. I want to build a brand for India, in India. And what is that going to be? I really didn't know. Right? But I knew I was going to be on that journey, and I was going to be on that quest of finding out what it is. But it was a consumer brand, and that was something that I was very clear on. Fast forward, moved over to the US. After my MBA, I worked in retail. Worked with this large retailer, and there I was in consumer strategies, marketing strategies, and consumer data analytics. And I was spending a lot of time understanding consumers, all of that. And that's when this grain called quinoa started coming up. This is 2007, 8, 9, around that time frame. So quinoa, this humble Peruvian grain, started making its, this entire piece around it. And it intrigued me because it was there across categories. And as a retailer, you get to see categories. You're not restricted to a particular category, if you will. And I could see it going across and across. And obviously it begs the question, like, what is this grain about? You start researching. I started reading. I dug deep. And I said, this is very, very similar to millets. And just ask me this one simple question, which is, if quinoa could do this for the world, why can't I do this for millets? And why can't we bring this back? And why can't we bring this entire thing back? Crazy, audacious stuff, but I think when you're young, I guess you can do a lot of crazy, audacious stuff. And it was a question about saying, can you really look at bringing back and reviving this grain? And also, mind you, we are also at a stage in India, this is now 2011, where a large amount of our population has moved from what I call hunger satisfaction to nutritional satisfaction, where we could actually say, okay, I've got the base level hunger sorted, and I can actually think about nutritional satisfaction. And that's really the context and really the space with which I took on this journey of saying, can we revive this 4,000-year-old grain? Can we bring this grain? Can we make it relevant to the 21st century? Can you build a brand around it? Can you build products around it? Can you do all of that? Sounds great. All of this sounds beautiful, but then that's the first thing I come across, right? No, not possible. We can't do this. You're crazy. Because of the work of the Green Revolution and all the work that's happened in the industry, rice and wheat, I call it like the over-the-counter OTC pharma drug. You want to start any industry around it, there's enough and more consultants, there's enough literature, there's enough machinery, the whole ecosystem is ready for it. But when it comes to millets, there is absolutely no know-how. There is no science, there is no know-how, there's no literature, there was none of it. So very quickly I realized that if I'm going to go on down this path, I will have to build from scratch, which means I'll have to build machines from scratch. I'll have to build the entire processing technology and all of that. We're having some interesting conversations. I mean, today, there were pieces that I had to do that there was no other option, right? Because if I had to win and build a business around millets, I'll have to really dig down in science and technology, which was something that we really did very early in the day. I went out to retailers. They thought I was mad. I went to consumers, talking to them. I don't think they could understand what we were trying to build. But then we were very clear that if we were able to build the entire ecosystem and deliver what we are supposed to be doing, I said, maybe people will see what we're trying to do. Ultimately, we're in the business of food. Food is about taste. Food is about emotion. Food is about ensuring that you don't just have them consume it once, but have them consume it again and again and again. Because consumption is really about not that one-time purchase. It is that 5th time, the 20th time, the 100th time. And that's actually where it is about. And we wanted taste at the core of whatever we did. Because at the end of the day, you can say health food, you can say all of that. The difference between food and pharma, who likes to eat a pill? I don't think I do. I don't think nobody does. But you enjoy food. So you should never take that away from the fact of food. And that was something that was very, very core for what we were building. We didn't want to sell the story of drudgery. We didn't want to sell the story that millets is a poor man's food. We didn't want to do that. We said we will build a brand that is around bringing happiness, bringing that joy, and really just being gentle to your soul. And how do we really bring that across? So if you're bored by now about what I'm speaking, you can read the copy. Copy is what marketing guys talk as a very jargonish way of sentences. But if you see what that copy is really talking about, it's just to bring the honesty, the authenticity of what we're trying to build. Essentially, we're saying, here is a 4,000-year-old grain, and we're trying to make this the way your grandmother would make it and give it to you. And that's essentially the brand that we said we will build. So it's always nice, fancy, great. You've got a brand, you've got all of this, you've got all of these pieces that is there. And I think one piece that really left with me was P-Cube, as I call it. In any of these audacious stuff that we do, if you're not persistent, you really cannot, right? You have to fight through every single. If you remember the sine curve that I told you, it's about being persistent to go through the highs and lows, never giving up, persistence. Patience. Food habits take time to change. It will not happen overnight. It's not an Instagrammable moment, right? It's going to take that time. How are you going to get people to really go and build a habit around a grain that is 4,000 years ago? And about that entire thing about persistence and patience. The last, purpose. Purpose is the one thing that actually gets an entrepreneur going. It's the only reason that gets you going, right? I mean, you can say sales numbers, you can say all of that. But at the end of the day, and a lot has been spoken about purpose. I've been a big believer of purpose. If there is a purpose, you then get out and say, I'm going to go after that purpose. Because it is the singular motivational factor that is really there. So through this grueling time of where the consumer didn't understand what we were doing, the retailers were very skeptical. Then slowly they understood that we were really keeping consumer at core. Slow and steadily the industry started seeing. Slow and steadily the consumers started seeing. And it was that entire piece. It was a long journey. It was a long journey. It feels like only, 12, 14 years. But it was there was a period in between. I know the dark days, right? There were dark days, but you just had to be persistent. You had to be patient, and you had to recall that purpose of why you're building what you're building. Thankfully, as we were building and as we were doing this, the Tata Group saw what we were doing. They saw the power of what we were building. And I was very, very clear that we were not going to be just building for today and just for now, but how do you build something at scale, and how do you build something that you can really take to the masses? For me, this was a very, very, I would just say, it was a great pat on the back, because for the group to have actually reached out to us, right, and say, would you want to partner with us to mainstream millets? And to me, that was a perfect way for me to actually take millets and take it beyond what I could have potentially done. Because at the end of the day, it was not, and with due respects to everybody in the room, this is not the audience that I was trying to sell to. Right? It is about how do you take it to the length and breadth of this country? How do you take it to a much, much larger scale than I could potentially do singularly? And to me, it was a perfect way of how we could marry purpose and get scale to be able to mainstream millets and really build that entire thing through. I was also very clear, and a deal breaker, as it was both from my end and from their end, was I said, I'm not selling this to you for you to take and run away. I said, we will partner, which means I will continue to run and build, and we will build this thing together such that there will be something that you will then hold on and last forever. And that was really the essence of how this marriage came together. It gave me this power. Tata Tea is called Desh Ki Chai. Tata Salt is Desh Ke Namak. It actually gave us the power to look at Tata Soulful and say Desh Ke Millets. And can we actually build that and stay strong to that course of building for India and building for many parts of India, right? Not just for the South, not just for the East, not just for the West, but building this entire piece. This gave me that freedom. I remember the first time I showed this slide to the board, they looked at me, they said, thankfully I was already inside the group, so then they didn't have any copyright issues. But it was also the ability that they were seeing that what an entrepreneur can do. Desh Ke Millets is not my name. I mean, it's just something that I see, Desh Ke Chai, Desh Ke Namak, and I'm like, bingo. I said, this is a perfect way for us to be able to build this out together. Anybody in FMCG will know this, right? So 5, 10, 15, these are trial packs, these are entry price points as we call it. I call them as actually consumption packs. These are not trial packs. India is a country where our wants are more than what we can afford, right? So which means I will have to make choices. And hence you see this entire piece about 5, 10, and 15. So as much of making millets cool, bringing back all of these grains, one of the key things if we wanted to build Desh Ke Millets is to build a business that was profitable, build a business that was able to build on small single serve packs that we could actually take across the length and breadth of this country. And that was a key piece for us to be able to actually scale the particular size of the business. Gives us the real liberty to really reimagine everyday foods. We looked at everyday foods of what we were trying, what we were consuming, and started innovating across, using our millet technology, using science, using the piece in terms of how we had developed each of the machines through and through. And we started to really catapult our entire thing. Today, Soulful operates in a 10,000 crore category plus, right? So that's the size. And today, for me to think of millets to be able to operate in that kind of a category size, and there are very many more that one can do. I'll give you an example of a category that was one of the last ones that we did launch before I stepped away, was rusk. Rusk is a daily consumption product. The house of Tata Consumer has Tata Tea, Tata Coffee. Rusk is consumed with tea and coffee. An average rusk has got around 60 to 80% maida, loaded of sugar. We looked at, can you reimagine this? Can we bring enzymes in? Can we look at bringing millets in? Can we get a better rusk for India that can be served with Tata Tea, with Kannan Devan, with Gemini, with all the tea brands that they had? And being able to build and develop that. And I was telling this to Jimon, it took me less time to develop the product than to convince everybody within the group, because that is the entire thing, to the point that I had to literally thump my hand on the table and said, guys, you need to believe me, I will get it done, right? And to me, it was great, because in 9 months, we reached more than 1 million plus households, and we launched only in 2 states. And that's the power, and that's the power that the scale of Tata Consumer was able to give us. These are the farmers who, for this 4,000 years that we forgot, they continued to grow the grain. They didn't let the grain go away. Giving them packs back what we have made for modern India. And when I say modern India, just to give you a sense, I'm not talking tier 1 cities. I'm talking about a larger mass India. The joy that they get of seeing their humble millet, humble ragi, coming back into a packaged food, something that they never thought about, something that they never could understand. Over the course of these years, a lot of lobbying, a lot of policy writing, all of the work that we had done in Delhi enabled a lot of stuff of, some of you have been seeing some of the, let me say, the schemes, the pieces that are there. The central government, extremely thankful, because they bought into what we were trying to build. Right? We had the International Year of Millets, we had the National Year of Millets, we had the Honorable Prime Minister talk about it in his Mann Ki Baat. He also started pushing it. It was a great piece, right? And today it gives me great joy. Today, millets is not a fad, right? There are 1,000 brands that are out there running millets, available in stores across product categories. It gives us immense joy, because here my purpose is not just about building a brand, it was about bringing back a grain, and how do you build that grain back? And how do you do that? a very important thing when you build something, you sometimes get very, very emotive about it. But every chapter must end. And today, after 12 years of believing, building, and pursuing this entire piece, happily to step away, and as I've left it with an able team, and more importantly, a brand that will stay beyond what a founder has to do, and to find itself in the house of a group that can actually take it larger. So with that, I'll just give you a quick wrap, and hopefully this gives you a little bit of a flavor. I'll hand it back to you, Jimon, for anything that may be. Thank you.
Well, when he said P Cube, I thought Prashant Persistence Parameshwaran. That is P Cube, not persistence, patience, and purpose. So over to the audience actually for your questions to Prashant, because it's been fantastic to have somebody here who's gone through a journey which at some point of time I personally would have aspired to be part of that journey. So great to have you in the room. So if there is anybody, I'm sure there are questions here for you, Prashant. There you go.
One was you spoke about there being tough times and really dark days. Would really love to know what those were and how you overcame that. And the second is you spoke about purpose, and yet you said that when you were young, you were very clear that you always wanted to build a brand. So was this journey about building a brand, or was it about the millets, or was the purpose millets? Just to give me a sense of that.
I'm one of those guys who have absolutely no problem in saying you need to have a shrink, right? You need to go talk to people, and I'm the guy in Bangalore who will give everybody 7 numbers. I'm like, boss, figure an appointment. You need to talk to people because it's dark. It's dark. And again, it's dark because when you open the paper, there's somebody who's raised 100 crores, somebody has raised 500 crores. Everything looks great, right? And you're like, shit, why is this not happening to me? Right? And it's but natural that would be there. I think the other piece that was also there, that's just to give you a sense. I've had months where I was not sure I will make the paychecks. And I have this self-imposed issue, which is to say that people have joined you because they have faith in you. Damn it, perform, right? So you've got those. Maggie crisis came and smack hit me like a lorry hit you, because what happened with I'm just giving an example of the Maggie crisis, has nothing to do with Soulful, right? But essentially, FSSAI just wiped and said, these notices, any types of food like this, please shut down. Now, an ITC and Nestle and all these guys can lobby through. And I was looking at myself and said, how the hell are you going to do this, right? And then you just have to work through, you have to then go to Delhi, lobby, you have to do this entire thing and all of that. So I think there are a lot of those dark days, but I think what's important is how do you surround yourself with 2 types of people. Positive, and people who say, I understand your situation, I feel sad for you, man up, buck up, let's keep going. And I think it's very important. I've always had very tough love bosses and tough love people around me. It's not easy, but I think it's important to, and that's where I think the persistence really has to pay. That was the first one. The second one about brand and millets, and I think they're 2 different things. The brand was a personal piece, right? That I still want to do more brands. I love brands. I think what I always say is brands are like immortal human beings. They have to outlive all of us, right? So that's to me a whole different piece. At the same time, I wanted a meaningful brand. I didn't want a brand which is like zing zang zo, like means nothing, right? It has to mean something. So I think millets gave me the root for the purpose. It gave me something that I was able to connect with. It gave me something, and I think it was also the agricultural backgrounds, all of those things. It just gave me something that I felt, oh, I think this has got something that I believe in. And that's really what it is.
How did you convince them to partner with you? In fact, I had a similar thing wherein they insisted on a complete buyout. In fact, Vivek was the man in between. He insisted on a complete buyout. I
So yeah, so I have this constant debate with people. So I never approached them; they approached me.
Yeah.
Right. So I think
That is also
the
that is
great
what
part is,
happened.
I think the great part in negotiation, which I think you'll like, is when somebody comes in as a buyer,
Correct.
as against you going in as a seller.
Yeah.
It was a walkaway deal. I said I'm leaving. So I did not. That was my opening, right? I said we are not having this conversation if not for this, and I was very clear. I did not build this brand with intention to sell to Tatas, right? And I had very clearly stated that, hey, I'm going. This, it's like the saying that I always tell my company and everybody in the team, this train is moving forward. You decide if you want to hop on or not, because my train is moving, right? I've just stopped right now at this train station. Want to get on, get on. Want to get off, get off. We're a democratic world, but this train's moving forward. And I think I was just clear. I think and I was not trying to do a negotiation tactic. I was just genuinely honest about it because I knew I had to build, even with the group. That's why I lasted 4 or 5 years, because I knew we had to build, we had to do stuff, and keep it into a place where it's ready to, to grow for that future. I think that's how I approached it.
A lot of things which I think I should learn from you.
Prashant is, you build something with so much passion and commitment and emotional, I would say, involvement, engagement. How do you walk away from there? Yeah, so that's a question I think all of you have in your mind. I have the answer, but I will let Prashant respond.
So the day we ran our first commercial production in Hoskote was also the day that my wife gave birth to my first daughter. Right? So for me, every time I looked at the brand, I would look at Anaika, my older daughter, and I would look at where is she in maturity. Right? So please understand that it's obviously, I made it tougher for myself. I'll never forget, I think it was June, July of this year. I remember, so every morning we go drop her in the bus stop, and I saw her walk, right, wearing the shorts that I detest seeing, but skimpy legs, just walking. I said, man, she's becoming a big girl, all right? And I said, now's the time. You can sell. You can move, you can step aside. I think the other piece is you have to have that mindset. And I was telling Jimon this in the car. I would have hated myself to be that entrepreneur who had sold and then said, no, but when I was running it my way, I was doing a much better job. You're such an old corporate company, you're not able to do it. I said, I will not be that guy. You've taken the decision to sell. You've taken that entire piece to do it. How are you then going to be able to aid them to succeed? Because the intention is not of, hero manship, right? I'm better than you, you're better than me, etc. And I think mentally, so I remember telling my 2 other co-founders, is guys, we've sold. We will continue to run the business. So yes, I am the father. There is a mother. And forgive me if this is going to come across a little rude, but you have to tell yourself rude things to do things. Think you've given your child away, right? You're now a guardian for the next 4 or 5 years. Let's be super clear. The baby is no longer yours. So mentally be ready on that spectrum. And this was the first thing I told my team, right? I told my team, I need this mindset. If this mindset ain't there, the door is out. Please leave. Because you have to wear that mindset. And then when you approach, then you're approaching it constructively, right? You want the kid to become a better kid. So that's the long to that short question.
Prashant, when he did this with Tata, is also knowing that Tata is the right new parent who can take it to a level where Prashant on his own could not and would not have been able to achieve. That's one point. Second point is he did not give it to a Nestle or a Britannia, but he gave it to a Tata. And there is a purpose for that because it kind of matches with his ethos of what and how he invested his time and effort in Soulful, the purpose. And that purpose continues with Tata. It may not have continued with a Nestle. So this is what probably let it be in a better space today than if he would have done it on his own. So in that way, the purpose has become the most important aspect of this journey. When you know that the child can grow much better in a better environment than in the limited environment and space I can give. So that's amazing. Not all founders have this. And in my journey with Cancor, when Sanjay was giving off the company to Man, he never even came back to Man for nearly 10 years. And his first visit was last year, after 10 years. So somebody asked him, he said, I have no emotions attached to this. For me, it's just a transaction. So there are two different types of mindset. Because here you have you built something on purpose. There, the purpose was different. The purpose was to monetize. So that's how different, founders think.
Prashant. So I'm from same industry, so I know the pain that goes through in building a brand. I've seen him at many exhibitions. How passionately, in his initial days, you can see the real fire in him. And I knew that this brand and he's going to go places. So it's an amazing journey that you've gone through. What I would like to know is now, there's a lot of startups coming in the food industry. You grew this brand in a particular way, and then you're getting into a total corporate kind of, environment. So how was that navigation? Some challenges you face, I'm sure that we...
First things first, I didn't know why they wanted me to open a PF account, right? Because I was like, boss, I don't want my salary cut on PF, right? As an entrepreneur, like, boss, I don't want PF. So it's on a lighter note, that was the first thing. It definitely was difficult. It was not easy. But I think what the group was also very kind was, they said, see, this is an entrepreneur. We can drive him nuts, or we can make the best out of it. My boss was the guy I reported to, and he reports to Chandra, so I was literally L-1 as it's called in the corporate world. They were very clear that they would let me run the ship. They gave me a lot of autonomy, right? They gave me a lot of that peace and that freedom to be able to build. And I think that was a very big one. So it was not just about selling into a large, but selling into a set of people who also believed that, here's a guy who's very clear that we'll build, right? I remember, because I used to do, and in business, so you're numbers driven, right? So working with the finance team of saying, how am I going to really churn profitability? How am I going to do all of those pieces? I think really worked. What I learned a lot is, for a group that is so diverse, how they manage, right? And to me, that is just outstanding. You will not believe, and I'll just share this, between the 8th, 9th, and 10th of every month, there is so I say 8th, 9th, and 10th because one could land on a Friday or a Saturday, but there are 2 days. The day starts at 7:45, 8 a.m., ends at 8 p.m. It is like a machine is reviews, right? It's like a machine. And they say, all creativity, please out of the window. This is the boxes. This is the same set. The MISs just get published onto that. No, don't put photo, no nothing, right? Everything is there. There are very clear tables. And the ability to manage such a diverse business, but to have a very simple method, right? So in fact, to a lot of my friends where I sit with them, I can't share the decks, but I sit and say, guys, this is a beautiful way of how you manage, because you'll have diverse businesses, right? And all of you are, great businessmen, and you'll have diverse businesses. And how do you then say, okay, this is how I'm going to monitor this business, not for today, but for the next 3 years. And then you say, this is how I'm going to monitor, this is how I'm going to see the growth, this is how I'm going to do it. You could be there, he could be in, somebody else, but those decks don't change. And everything goes with a 24-hour pre-read. The CEO never comes in to the meeting without having done his pre-read. So 90% of the time, the meeting will start and he'll go, jump to slide 9, 5th point, why is that so, right? And I'm just saying the ability for one to do that, I think was, and it's something that I really learned about systems and processes, as we call, right? And I think it's that, yeah, there are stuff that sometimes it constrains creativity, but there are sometimes, and it's just 2 days. But it's 2 days, and that's everything has to be. I think that's something that I really learned a lot. The other thing I learned a lot about was building at scale. Right? So, new project coming in, don't come and tell me you're going to do 5 crore, 10 crore business. Right? Can it do 100 crores in year one? Can it do a 500, 600 crores in 3-4 years? Then let's go. It might fail, that's okay. But if it doesn't have that kind of a sight, let's not waste our time. So I think thinking at scale was also another thing. Right? I went, just as I exited, we are in 7 lakh stores. You can imagine, right? If I had to build to 700,000 stores in India across the length and breadth, there's no way I could have done it. But I think that is the power that I think the group also gives you.
And on this timeline, it's around 5 years you have been there. So when you started the journey, was this timeline just like, you decided, okay, I think it's just...
Yeah, no. So I could have left in 2 years. Technically, as per the agreement, I could have left in 2 years, right? But I was also clear, and then they would have been on the board, and I would have just handled it. But I think I just felt we were not ready, because it's also a very large company, very large group, right? For them to understand millets, technology, these pieces, why, because also understand this is a company that was selling tea and salt, right? So they're not really in branded, high processing, high value addition. And value addition we were adding was like from the grain to my end was close to 25x, right? So if I buy something, I'm adding 25x value, right? So that's not, even the finance guys like, I'm not understanding, right? So it took that time, and I think you have to do it at that right time. I was not in a hurry, and they gave me, a lot of stuff. We even did some international launches, bombed beautifully on my face. Other than the fact that I went to London and went to US some 50,000 times, but bombed, right? The project bombed. But it is okay. It's a great learning. And I think they gave me that freedom as well. So this is when I wish, I think we were speaking about this earlier, right? We were talking about the model, which is for larger companies to actually innovate is not easy. For them to build from a 0 to 100 is not easy. They are good at running and growing something that is already built, right? So for them, that whole, like what you were saying, right? Trade fairs, the hustle, there's a bunch of stuff. I remember I went to a retailer with the sales team in London. It was the first time they were meeting the category buyer. I said, what do you mean the first time you're meeting the buyer, right? And this is the head of sales. He said, yeah, my junior goes, I don't need to do all this, right? So I think it's the entire hustle. And just to give you a sense, when we were doing the same launch, just to give you a sense of scale and example, when we were doing this and when we bombed, in that same time period, there were 3 brands that made 10 to 15 million dollars and 15 million pounds of business, right? They built around that same stage. So it was not that, that the market was not ready, it was all that, but you needed to look at that hustle, right? And I think that's where large corporations and smaller ones. So to me, when I look at it, I'm like, okay, that's also a giveaway of when you're going to compete later, right? You have to remember that about the larger companies, if you will. I hope that answers your question.
Where were you getting your manufacturing done?
I did it completely in-house.
Okay,
So what we did, so I'll explain this a bit better. Given that we had to do a lot of pieces of customized engineering, I broke down the processes. The key processes we kept in-house. Now, I also realized that, the capital, there is a limitation of capital, right? One of the biggest things that I'd seen a lot of people do was first thing, a plant to take, right? Put up a plant, right? And there's dime and dozen of food factories around India which are operating at 5% capacity utilization, 5%. And I'm not mincing my words, because they've gone and put up a plant. They said, first we'll put up a plant, right? So I was very clear, we will not put up full plant till I have a scalable set of volumes. But what I did was we took up pieces of the processes. We did that. We worked very closely with active suppliers, and we created and said, I will control the ecosystem. And then we went to plants that was shut down. There were a lot of this 5%, 10%. So there's a plant X, plant Y. I'd go up to them and say, you're shut down, I'll get you up and running, machine is yours, but I will run the show, right? So fixed assets is on you, I will run the variables, right? And I'll give you a conversion, but the plant will be run by me, right? So we used to run their plants, and so very quickly we got a playbook of how I would go and see if there is a plant that is, not having a good capacity utilization, go with them and work with them. And the good part is, even to date, we work with most of them, right? So then as we scaled and we did that, we then put up a very large plant in Biddi, in outskirts of Bangalore, which we did. So that's if it gives you a little bit of the timeline of how we built out the plants and how we use. Like Rusk and a lot of that stuff, a lot of new, everything we did, but we always had a black box. We always had a set of black box stuff, which made it very, very difficult for people to copy what we were doing. Because we had technology very, very deep. Because we understood the grain to the T. We understood what happens when you break a grain, at what level, where does it go bad, what is the taste, what products taste well with it, what doesn't go well with it, right? I'll just give you a small example, right? The best Belgian chocolates, right, that I could use if I put it with ragi, it tastes so bad. Like you will want to spit it. But if you taste the chocolate separately, it would be the most delicious thing. It just was a marriage made in hell, right? So then how do you then develop products that is then based for that particular grain? And that's literally the detail you go into.
All that was transferred to the Tatas.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't do all this. I'll keep it in my back pocket. I mean, it's theirs.
Just a question about your initial transition, right? While you setting up the company, you were in US incorporate, and then you.
No. I was not in the US. I came back to India and then I incorporated the company.
Right. But what I'm saying is the transition was sort of from US corporate to startup in India, and startup selling to India. How was that experience?
It's like they say, when you're young, you make all these bold moves. Will I do it again? I don't know. I'm not going to lie at all. Having seen and having done will I start something? I definitely will want to do something. But that's a very bold one. And I think you can do that, no? When you're like, I think you have that, you have so much energy that, even if a damned tsunami hits, you will be like, I'll swim through this, right? So when you're in that zone, then I guess it's like ignorance is bliss in that way.
My question was almost similar to his, so that's already answered. But I still have one more doubt. You are an entrepreneur. You have co-founders with you, and the whole thing is run by you. The idea and all the implementation, everything. But how important is to have a team with you?
No. So it is not common. It is not uncommon in 90% of the meetings where I tell the guys that, boss, tomorrow morning I could wake up, boss will come and hit me. Then what will happen, right? And I'm very, very clear. It's a company. It's not a person, right? I'm not running a professional services here, right? We're building an organization. We're building an institution. Nothing can depend on me. I was super clear on that. Yeah, you may bring out the best of ideas. But that's why you're thankfully on top, I guess, right? But it's very, very important for you to get your team to deliver everything, your team to do all of that stuff. If they're not doing the job and you're doing the job, either then you should be fired or they should be fired. One of them has to be fired, right? And I always say this, right? And like they would call me, oh, Prashant, we need you to do tasting. I said, I'll do tasting. Give me 3 headcount out. Then I'll come in for tasting. I have no problem, right? And I'm telling you something, this is last 6-8 months that I was doing. I said, you don't need me to do this, right? So it's very, very important, and not in a rude way, if you get what I'm saying, because you have to then give that capability to the team. Give them also the autonomy, give them that decision making. They may fail. They may make a mistake. As long as they're not killing somebody, it's okay. That's a pardonable sin, right? If they kill somebody, that's not. And I think that's very, very important. The entrepreneurial gut, that instinct, that's a tough one, right? So that when you see, so for example, when I see a news article, you know that there is more to it. I think the backing that they both gave me was not measurable. It's not from the capital, it's not from all of that, right? It's just to say, if you feel you want to do it, go. But put your head down and do it, right? Do what it takes. So that's one very, very big one. I've seen friends of mine who are not as blessed as me, let me just say, from just the attitude my folks had, right? And I think it's a very, very important, and I'm not going to belittle that attitude. At the same time, you're constantly told off. You're constantly pushed down. You're constantly, that's a constant, right? And that's where I think that persistence really pays, right? You got to take some of them you have to take it through the year, you have to pass it out through the other. Some affect you, and I'm not going to lie, right? If somebody keeps telling you, you're an idiot, you're an idiot, you're an idiot, when suddenly you start looking, shit, am I an idiot? Right? It's human, right? And so that's also why it's important, I think, to also get small wins, right? Everything doesn't have to be that big win. So I also have this analogy with cricket, right? Test cricket is not about the 4s and 6s, it's the singles and the doubles, right? So if you don't keep getting those scores, that's important. And that's also why you need to also be around that positive set of people. And if you're going to try and do something like what we were trying to do, the world is not being able to see what you're trying to do. So you have to have that belief. See, today, millets, mains, it's not a conversation, right? Everybody understands it. Again, 10 years back, I'll never forget, there was a plant in Chennai, this again like 5% capacity utilization. I went up to that plant. I think he was a postgraduate metallurgy scientist. And he has this conversation with me as to why you cannot put ragi inside his extruder, because his extruder will corrode and it will become black. Now I had to then explain to him how this is stainless steel, and stainless steel, it will not corrode. So you have all those jokers, right? You will have all of that, but you have to just be patient about it, work through it, and go at it. It's, again, easier said than done, but it's an uphill task.
Did you choose millet because it is fairly gluten-free product?
I'll be honest, no. And I don't think gluten-free will sell in India yet. I don't think.
I'm a very grateful person to Soulful, because I have a grandson who's absolutely allergic to gluten. And I tried oats, the Indian oats has got gluten. So I took him, I saw Soulful. I took him to a hospital to check out, because I didn't know what the reaction would be. And now I'm busy because I found that it's the perfect thing for
Thank you. Thank you.
So
I can easily lie to you right now, but I'm not going to. We were very clear, we knew that it was gluten-free. In the initial sets of the pack, we were calling it out, we were trying to promote. But very quickly we said, that percentage in India is just so small that I can't build a brand, I can't build a business around it. Right? So then what we said is, it will be what we call an RTB. It will be one of your benefits that you will have, but it will not be the core piece. Right?
A lot of people have this gluten allergy. They don't know about it.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. The gut, so if you actually ask me, another new big space that's actually popping out right now is gut health. Right? And that entire piece, right? In India, it's like, oh, something went wrong, it's okay, just go to the bathroom, everything will be fine. Eat a banana, everything will be fine. Right? I mean, that's very common. It's very common. Because we do a lot of consumer immersions. We spend time with mothers, grandmothers, parents, and all the time. And when we ask this question, what happens when, somebody in the house says something is wrong? 90%. Eat a banana, everything will become fine. 90%. Right? It will not like, oh, maybe I should go for a checkup. But today, again, conversations have started. So also, when you think of India, in my mind at least, so it's 330 million households, right? 1.4 billion, all that we can talk. 330 million households, take off that last 120, 130. Because that needs a lot of UN work, a lot of central government work. So I'm going to take that out. From the top, if you take, we are in that top 5 to 10 million households, right? Then there is one sitting chunk of this 120 million households. Right? That 120 million households is what is driving consumption, which is driving consumption at a different level. Now, suddenly, your 330 million household has shrunk to 100 and 120. So can you build a business for that 120 million households? So I think that's the math. I was also in this purist zone a little earlier. Then very quickly, maths doesn't lie, numbers don't lie. So very quickly moved into that space. So, for example, another thing, there was a product called Ragi Flakes. The number of people who told us that it reduced their sugar spikes was unbelievable. But I would have broken the company had I gone down clinical studies. I would have broken the company. I would have gone down long ago. It was a call I had to take. I said, are you going to be that science-based, or are you going to be science-based where it matters and then try and get scale? But it's a regret. But it is.
I'm your regular customer for fruit and nut. Fruit and nut. Right from the time it was launched, because I go to my plantation in the morning, come back in the evening. So this.
Thank you.
I buy that biggest pack.
Lots. No, it's a great question. Great question. So, and let me try and explain this with facts, right? The biggest markets for Ragi for us was South and West, right? Because in South we had Ragi Kanji, whatever it is, and mainly Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, AP Telangana, right? That's obviously the South. They understood Ragi very quickly. In the West, my entire communication was Nachni, okay? Because in India, they don't know finger millet equal to Ragi equal to Nachni. They don't know it. They know Nachni. You move towards Orissa, we stop calling all this and we say Madua, right? You have to use the local language and go there. And again, I'm not talking about Bhubaneswar, Calcutta, right? I'm talking go down to pop group of 1 lakh, 5 lakh population places. The North is a very Jowar-driven piece. North and the Rajasthan West, that side is very. Maharashtra, they're like, boss, I don't know who you are, what you are, right? I'm not Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, sorry, in the center. UP had, and UP started seeing a lot, but UP was also, UP is an interesting, it's to me, the most fascinating state, right? It has a population of America, right? Inside that state. But that's a state where you can't be selling millets and all of that stuff. You have to be selling benefits. You have to be selling those. So I think the narrative in each state is different. And how do you control that narrative? How do you say that story in the way it has to be? Truthful stories, no lies, but you have to say stories which are particular. And which is why they say India has many Indias, right? We can't have that one thing that goes left to right to left. That piece of India 1, India 2, India 3, but it's that same zone. It's that same zone. There's a beautiful book. I'm not able to remember. I'll just pull it up in Amazon. She's a IIM Ahmedabad professor. She's on a board. She calls it a marketing book. It is a statistics book, but it is an eye opener of a book. It just breaks these numbers down to beautiful stuff, and it's a great book if it's of interest. I'll just share it once after this. I'm not able. Rama Gopinath. I'm not able to suddenly remember, but it's a great book. And it talks around these zones. It actually goes another level, and which I think from people from Kerala will relate. And it actually says money is not just in the metros, right? Money is actually in the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And money is not just in the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Money is also with civil servants. Because civil servants not just make money, they also have a good pension that comes in, right? And actually them as consumption. And then the agricultural farmers. No income tax.
So you're focused on in the middle, you're saying?
Yes, the middle. It's not a problem. So please understand, I'm not in the commodity business. So if I buy, I'm adding 25 times value, right? So that's you have these thumb rules. Like I have these thumb rules. So which means if I'm doing something, this has to be my rupees per kg. If I'm not in that rupees per kg, the math will completely go topsy-turvy. At the same time, when you're looking at millets, the beauty is, please understand that the farmer is moving crops basis demand, right? So I'll give you another data point. When I started 14 years ago, price of 1 kg of ragi was 12 rupees. Today it is around 38. Today is 38. Just see the jump. But obviously I will also have to evolve over that particular piece, but that's also because of MSP, because of all of that. But if I also see between then and now, millet production has gone up 10 times. So it was around 1.5 to 2% earlier, which is now at around 5.5, 6%. Right? Because the farmer also says, wait, I'm also starting to earn more. So the minute the demand comes, this is they immediately come in back into the growing piece. And also that's where the central government pieces also really become important. Because, sorry? 32, 33. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Please.
Is this cultivable in south? All these substitute good foods.
Uh-huh.
Is it substitute?
Karnataka is the largest grower. The reason I went to Bangalore was because of this.
Okay.
I mean, I like Bangalore as a city, but it was because of this. Karnataka and
So we can grow in
and Andhra.
Alappuzha also.
I guess I don't. Yeah, because it's a very, very semi-arid. It doesn't need Alappuzha. Actually, it doesn't need Alappuzha. That's too much water for it. It'll be more in the Palakkad side. Palakkad, Malappuram, that side and all easily it'll grow. It's a very semi-arid crop. So the other thing, and the reason UN and the central government and all, God forbid tomorrow you don't have rain for 1 year. These crops can grow. So if you go back in history, this was actually a crop that was actually from Sahara. It's from the African belt. That's the roots of where the grain actually comes from. And it is nothing but grows with absolute semi-arid drought type conditions. And that's what the hardiness of the... Today it is called millets. It used to be called coarse grain cereals. Before they said we have to rename it because it's not good. But it's nothing but coarse grain cereals is nothing but I can withhold a famine. And I can hold that kind of a thing. And they don't need any agricultural inputs. So nobody usually puts it. Yeah, please.
One more. What is quinoa? You are talking about quinoa. Consumption, production.
Yeah, so I think, I'll give it to you in dollars. I can give it to you in dollars. I don't know the metric tons.
Quantity.
I don't know the metric tons. To be very honest, I don't know the metric tons. ChatGPT will definitely get a better answer. But the global size of quinoa and quinoa value-added products is close to around $7.5, $8 billion. And that's what it said. But a lot of it is commodity. And there's no single brand. So that was the other thing that bothered me. I said, how can you allow all this to happen and there's no one brand that is leading it? But it's a very commodity. Nobody really did value addition as much in it.
So Tata's target is to become the global, what is there?
No, so I think I think they are also coming from a different place. They're trying to build a house of brands. They're trying to build good brands that are there, better for you brands. So that's the other thing. This is not their only, line of business, right? So they have got a whole set of the brands. So this brand will also go. It will take its course of time. Hopefully they will grow it well, because ultimately my name is associated with it. So. Because I know what will happen. If it flops, then it'll be like this bugger cheated us. Or something like that will come out, So then I hope that doesn't happen.
Last question.
It's like, I feel like a rapid fire round, but go for it.
You haven't seen anything yet.
No, you are the name Soulful is very good. Is it your original or somebody, your daughter?
So I'll give you, if given that I'm in Kerala and I think people may enjoy this story. So as we had all of this stuff, I have these, and I've always surrounded myself with smarter people. Right? I've realized that that's the best way to do this because there are smarter people in this world. But now to lure smart people, you need two things. Either you need money or you need alcohol. I didn't have money. So I got 2 bottles of single malt. I got some really good creative people on my terrace in Bangalore. I brainstormed. We finished those 2 bottles of single malt and they gave me 2 names. I took those 2 names to my trademark lawyer. One, he said, Prashant, there is no way in hell or heaven you're getting this name. Soulful, you put 1 more L, you give it to me, I'll give you the certificate. You will get the trademark. I'm not lying, but that is the truth.
How much mechanization has gone into growing ragi? There's a lot of mechanization.
Not much. So even now, if you actually go, if you go to North Karnataka, if you go Yeah, now if you, April, May, if you go in, you will see it's all on the road. So the shrubs that are there, it's basically because the head is like this, right? The head of the ragi is like this, right? So you have to basically take that out. So what do? They actually put it on the road. Cars and everybody will go on top of it, and it comes out. That's actually, you'll see this when you go into any of the smaller villages, it's very common. So they put it on the road, and that's how they do it. And frankly, I can't imagine them trying to, mechanize that particular one.
That's free jugaad.
Free jugaad, exactly.
No, that's what used to happen in Tamil Nadu all the way from rice.
Free of cost. Oops, sorry. So if you see that there on the right? So I mean, imagine if you had to do that entire piece, but it is essentially you have to do that sieve, and I think he touched upon it. So given that we were on this food and health, right? And then you take ragi, so then immediately, if I eat this, and again, please understand, in India, people don't talk about it, but it's there. If I eat this brown thing, I will become brown. It's, I mean, we can laugh about it, but it's the truth. It's the truth, right? So all that goes in the head. Nobody talks about it, right? So the one thing that we did was we said, we will talk, but we will not talk through communication. We'll talk through activation. So we did activation, right? So we used to go, I used to have at least, any Friday afternoon, if you had come to our office, there'll be nothing less than 100, 150 college kids who would be getting trained, would be going out for the weekend, getting a pocket money that they would want for the weekend, and all they would do is just get people to eat, taste. Because otherwise you will say, oh, ragi mudde, it tastes horrible, everything tastes bad. Because that's the thing, right? It's and food, it's taste. Once they pop in, oh, really? Right? And then it starts getting interesting. My best experience was in Delhi. Right? I used to love it. The aunties, Punjabi lady will come, she'll put her hand in, she'll say, ye kya hai? Rai hai kya? I said, nahi auntie, rai nahi hai, ye hai. Oh, ye kya hota hai? Then she'll put it in, she'll be, kharab hai. And then you'll give her one bowl, and then she'll be like, wow, this is so tasty. Are healthy bhi hai, chalo le lenge. Right? And you have to get them on that. But it's a journey, you have to. Yeah, it's the most important thing. I mean, today now, then last, I mean, it was also very nice. Yeah, last we had Manoj Bajpayee, right, as a brand ambassador. So you get to do that, I think, once you grow, once you have the capital, once you have the size, but yeah.
So Prashant, you built a successful brand, sold it, run it too. What's next?
He has a pulse. He said, so my mental framework is I've had my appetizer. My main course is pending. That's my mental framework. What am I going to do? I don't know. I don't want to rush it, I'll be very honest. I have a few things going in my mind. I have some theses of consumer, what consumers are about, what is it going to be. I'm just trying to paint that picture which is 10, 15 years out. And hopefully as I do that, God will be kind and I'll find something as it is. I have some spaces around experiences, around pieces, but it is around the 120, 150 million households that I think it's important. I've been doing a lot of social experiments, traveling Tamil Nadu, UP, doing all of this. I'm a big believer. I like South. I like the South India. I think there is something, and I think some focus should come. So all of those pieces. Hopefully I'll stitch, and some dawns will come out of it. So I don't know. So that's I'm being brutally honest, right? But I'm just painting that thing. I don't want to rush it, to be very honest. One part of me says rush it. One part of me says don't rush it. So I also don't know. But I'm not done.
Prashant, Jimon spoke about N.M.S. Swaminathan, the father of Green Revolution, being closely related to you. What was his advice and what was his, what did he feel about what you're doing?
If you've seen my deck, if you've seen anything, I never bring his name out, right? And I think he never said it to me, but as a youngster, I think the smartness is always in understanding what's not said, right? I could have very easily used his name, popularized it much more. Was not something that I wanted to do. But I do remember two things of our conversation. One was when I was in Chandigarh, before I went to the US. I did this dabbling with some seed potato and potato industry. And that's when he seeded this entire thing around the Bengal famine. He gave me a lemon. Like, he spent hours with me. I think some meeting of his got cancelled and I was there. So he had 4 hours with me and he was just, talking about hunger and talking about all of that. So I think that definitely stayed very strong in my head. Once I decided and once I'd, looked at this is what it is, I remember sending him a note. He very clearly said, "You're absolutely on the right path. Do it. Don't back off, right? And just put your head down." He was very, very kind. He, in fact, to show that he was serious about what it was, he actually hosted the entire press launch at his institute, which is in Chennai, in Tidal Park, next to Tidal Park, Taramani. He had that. He personally called the journalists and the press, and I think I'm ever grateful for that. So, and every time he would be like, whenever you come to Chennai, give me an update, tell me what's happening, how are you doing, what's progressing, all of those pieces. But yeah, it was always good to get that piece.
What made you take the call to leave Tata's?
I think I was done. I think the part of what is the role that as an entrepreneur I had to do, I don't think I could have done more. And I think it was now professional managers being able to run it better than I could. And I think that, I know for the next 3-4 months, there will be that little void for the business. But I think it's the right thing. They have to go through that little dip to come back and rise up. Because I put the full portfolio. I mean, the innovation was intense. Like, they don't need to innovate for the next 4 years. I'm not saying it in a brash way, please don't get me wrong. But they've got the pipeline, they've got everything. They just need to put their head down and execute. And I think they are better off. I was operating at 30% capacity in the last 1 year. At 46, I was not okay with that. I said, there's only so much tennis, swimming, traveling I can do. So I need to do more. And I think they understood and agreed. And obviously, right, I don't want to pick a bone with anybody there, right? So I think it was mutually spoken. Took the time, hired the right set of more people. And yeah, so I thought it was time for me to move.
Prashant, thanks for all of that. I think we've become very wise now. How to build a brand worth buying or worth selling. Okay, either way. So, P-Cube, he said, persistence, patience, purpose, Prashant Parameshwaran. So that's P to the power of 5. And many things, as an entrepreneur, you will go through ups and downs and you will have your challenges. As long as you have the conviction it will work, just go ahead and do it. Support will come. And that's one lesson. And the other key takeaway, and which it's always in the back of my mind, if you're the smartest person in the room, leave the room. That room is not worth your presence. You need to be elsewhere. That's a clear takeaway from there. Whether you do it with alcohol or whether you do it with money, which is Prashant's style, I think 2 bottles of single malt is always better than hosting a business convention to figure out who will take you to the next level. So great learnings here. Millets, way to go. What next is something we all look forward to, and wishing you all the very best from all of us here. Thanks once again, Prashant.